Welcome to the Working Genius podcast, where we discuss anything and everything related to the 6 types of working genius and how it impacts your work and your life. I'm Pat Lencioni, your host today, joined by a small crew of Cody and Beau, with Karen here and Matt in studio. But Tracy's out today on vacation, which is great. So, Cody, what are we going to talk about today?
The things we say.
That's right. And we say, when we talk about we, all of us that have working genius, which is everybody, what are the things that we say that generally come from our working genius profile? And it's fun to talk about this, because when we've talked to others about it, they're like, I always say that, whether it's in their head or they say it out loud. It's the kind of things we verbalize, which are an indication of our working genius in most cases.
Yeah, and so often if you're having a conversation with somebody and they haven't taken working genius, I don't know if this happens to you guys, I'm like listening to things that they're saying and then guessing in my head what geniuses I think that they have, which I try not to do. I have them take the assessment. But there's so many commonalities of how somebody approaches a conversation and the phrases that you will hear regularly based on their genius.
And Matt was saying this before we started. This is not a way to guess somebody's genius by listening to what they say. It's more like when you have a genius, it's really interesting to go, or you know somebody else does. Well, I hear that from them a lot, and that's where it comes from. And so, like, just right off the bat, I want to talk about wonder, the genius of wonder. And we have a guy in our office, Joel, who is a wonder discerner, but his wonder, most of his sentences begin with the phrase, I wonder. I mean, it's crazy how often he says that. We just laugh, and he does too, because that is something a wonderer tends to say, which is why we chose that word. They're like, what if, do you think that, is there something more? But it's funny how often they do say, gee, I wonder if. You're just asking the question.
Another phrase that I hear wanderers say a lot is, I love galvanizers. Just kidding. The other phrase that I hear them say is something like, oh, I'm not sure yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're going to, okay. So we're going to get to the pairings because we were talking to Matt, who's a WD, just like Joel. And one of the things that they tend to say is, I don't know. And what that means is I'm still thinking about it. There's probably nuances involved here. And that's the combination of the wonderer and the discerner.
And wonder is the only one where the actual title of the genius is the question that, or the thing that they say often.
Yes.
It is unique that is true of that. But you're totally right, Pat. There's wonderers in rooms who literally use that. What about, or I wonder if, or what if we did it? That so those phrases, as you're hearing them come out, and they're super helpful to reorient you at the start of a project. And so just paying attention and leaning into that is really, really helpful for a team.
Although, and I'll say, I think that's a feature. I think it's a great awareness by Joel that he does that, because it's like reminding me, oh, you're using your wonder right now. And pre-working genius, or without understanding that about him, it could have felt distracting, or like you're trying to change the subject, or it wasn't the right time to be able to ask that question. And just that little phrase helps remind me, oh yeah, he's using his wonder right now.
Exactly. And it lets you be in the right spot. I was talking to my wife last week, and she was throwing out a bunch of ideas. And I was saying, because I have discernment, I was kind of, well, I don't think that one. She goes, well, I'm just wondering. And I literally said to her, hey, you know something? If it's possible, I would love it if you'd lead with, hey, I wonder, because then I would be in the right posture, that she's not actually advocating something, she's putting it out there, and I could be more patient. And she goes, oh yeah, I could do that. Not that I have to demand that, but it would be a cue that she's just wondering something and not actually trying to propose it.
So I know we won't be able to go certainly through all 15 pairings, but do you want to talk about inventors, Pat?
Yeah, let's talk about what inventors say. That's you and me, Beau. When we were prepping for this, Karen said, they say this, ooh. And Matt was like, that's what it is, because they have an idea.
So
like,
good.
Ooh. And then what's coming is, what about this? Or, hey, I think this could work. Or literally, oh, I have an idea.
Yeah.
And this is tough to separate the geniuses, because I'm an inventor galvanizer. So all of my ideas sound like the pairing description is the evangelizing innovator. It always sounds like I'm convincing somebody about my ideas. So mine typically sounds like I have a smile on my face and I say, oh, I have an idea. Just like that. Like,
And people are like, of course you do.
Of course you do.
Which is super interesting that's, Beau, we work in the same office and I will be at the same desk as you and you'll say, I have an idea. And when you what you just described, Pat, is the posture then for me as a discerner is, oh, he's going to throw something out there and he wants me to discern it. So it's a not only a natural thing they say, but it is a prompt for the other people in that room to go, oh, right now he's about to invent. And what we do with that is help discern and nuance and like refine and make it better. And that's actually a really helpful cue for me when you say, I have an idea.
You know what's great about this is if you're working with other people and you know what their geniuses are, and they say one of these words that indicates their genius, do not crush them. So when Joel or Matt says, hey, I wonder, go like, oh, they're in their space. I need to honor this. And when an inventor says, oh, I have an idea, the last thing you want to do is go, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're actually in the place where they're most excited, right? And so maybe that's the most practical use of this podcast about what people say is to know they're actually giving you a clue that they're entering into their genius and they are so excited. And we want to encourage that.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that for just a moment. It's not enough, or it's a great first step to recognize somebody's using their genius. And then what an even better step to delight in and enjoy them getting to use their genius.
Yeah. Now, granted, sometimes they're going to do it at the wrong time. In other words, like you're launching a product and the inventor says, oh, I have an idea. And you can lovingly say, hey, is that an idea that could actually be implemented before 2 hours from now when we launch this? Or should we actually have you put that on hold until we can fully appreciate it? And oftentimes the person will go, oh, no, you're right. I was just inventing. This is probably not a good time, but it gives us language.
Another inventor phrase is, what about? Hey, what about this? What if we tried?
Karen just reminded me of something that she thinks I said. I don't know that I said it, but we should, when somebody is wondering or inventing, it's a good idea to say to them, wow, not how.
Right.
Oh, Beau said that. Oh, Beau, I'm giving you credit for that because you're the one who said that. Wow,
I
not
believe
how.
Abraham Lincoln said it first.
Well, I know when he started the country, he was the first president. He probably had to say that a few times. So,
I don't know where I first heard that idea, but that was so helpful for Nicole and I. Somebody said to her, hey, Beau just needs to hear, wow. And so she'll often very sarcastically go, wow, you want to start an airline? Oh, that's really great. I'll ask you how we're going to do that later.
Let's get that up next week. Okay. So we move on to the discerner. And we were like, what does a discerner say? And the best thing I could come up with at first was,
Yeah.
Which is their
I've often find myself giving a kind of, my wife, that's my indication that I think maybe that's not the best idea.
Right.
And that's I didn't know what you were going to say, but I say that very regularly.
Right. Because they're considering it and it's the first thing. And maybe they'll say, let's see, maybe so, maybe is a way. And oftentimes we read into it that they're just being negative, but they're literally considering it, processing it. And so sometimes there's a sarcastic, maybe, but oftentimes that's really what they're thinking.
Yeah, I watch discerners. Sometimes I can see that this math they're doing in their brain where they're like, I want to be affirming to you that I appreciate the vulnerability and the openness, but I sure don't like all those ideas. And the way that sometimes carries out is like, okay, I like a lot of this, or we're on a good start.
Well, it's also interesting. Just this week, a neighbor of mine had a business plan that he put together, and he wanted me to look at it. And the business plan, now we don't have enough trust. Like he kind of knows what I do, so he showed it to me. And so in very trusting environments, you don't have to couch your discernment with, let me just see. But so you can actually say, I don't like that idea, or, hey, I don't think that will work. But in this environment, he gave me this business plan, pretty, grandiose idea about inventing this new extreme sport, all this stuff. I also signed an NDA. I hope he doesn't listen to this, but he said, I didn't love the whole plan. So what I turned to was like, I gave him a little bit of feedback on the plan, the right amount of feedback from being a neighbor, and we don't have a trusting relationship. But then I just figured out like, well, here's how you could get this done. Like I was like not discerning the plan itself. Is like, if this is the plan and we can't change the plan, I'll go right to discerning how you might be able to pull this off, even though I don't think it's the perfect plan.
Right.
So it's like sort of the phrase might be like, oh, here's how you could do that, or something along those lines, where you're identifying or discerning and now that might be a little bit of my pairing. My DG is the phrase I find myself saying the most as a discerner galvanizer is, here's what you should do. It's part like I've identified it, and part like I'm going to move you in the direction of that.
Yeah, like, here, what about maybe you could do this?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, let's move to G. What did G's say? Beau, you're a G.
Let's see, probably the most, like, I don't know if I actually say this phrase, would be like, come on.
Right. Hey guys. Hey everybody.
Hey everybody. Yeah.
Hey everybody is a good one.
Yeah.
You're getting people's attention.
Or maybe it's even as simple as, all right.
Right. And let's go. Listen up. And I think that there's people listening to this right now that are galvanized. They're like, I think that, or I say that all the time. And if you're a parent, you could probably ask your kids, and they would be like, oh yeah, that's something that they say a lot.
Right.
I wonder what does a galvanizer sound like when they're frustrated that things aren't moving? Because those are the optimistic versions of like, I'm going to go coach my daughter's soccer team here in a few hours, and I'll be doing a lot of the optimistic, let's go, we can do this. But what about when they're feeling like a project is stalled, or that things aren't moving to galvanizing than they should? What does a galvanizer sound like then?
Ooh, that might be what makes them go quiet. I mean, after you've done it and you realize nobody's listening, and granted, it depends on what your other letter is, but they're probably like, I'm out. Once they've said it a bunch of times and they clearly, nobody here is interested in this, my guess is they're like, time to move on. I'm not coaching this sport next year.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny. My son just started playing t-ball, and now as I mentioned often on this podcast, I can't help but think about Working Genius when I meet. So there's a volunteer t-ball coach for 3-year-olds. There's 9 3-year-olds, and he definitely does not have galvanizing. And so we're at the first game, and he's trying to get the attention of these kids. And he came across like maybe like a WE, but 2 double responsive for sure. And very quickly I realized like, oh, he's going to need some help. And so I was like, come on guys, get in 2 lines, just the idea that it was so uncomfortable for him to want to push. And I bet there's a lot of the gather around, like that's how you're going to run the soccer practice tonight as a galvanizer, is making sure everybody's paying attention for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another way that I think galvanizing can show up, if you're like, I'm thinking of galvanizing plus enablement, often sounds like, I'm in. The person who hears the discerned idea and then is like, oh, I'm in, I'm ready to go. Or a GT is like, great, let's get moving.
Right. We'll get to the pairings in a second. You want to get to those pairings, which I love. By the way, people that don't have galvanizing and they're trying to galvanize often sound like they're nagging. Because really what they're saying is, I wish you would do this. I don't want to have to ask you. I can't believe I have to ask you. Please do it anyway. And it can come across like, what's wrong with you? And truthfully, they would say, I'm not a galvanizer. Don't make me do this. So, okay. What does a person with enablement say? This is pretty easy, right? Like,
I can help with that.
Yes, exactly.
I thought for sure you were going to say, this is easy. I'm not sure I've been listening to them. I've been too busy talking, but yes, I can help. Sounds good. How can I help?
Yeah, how can I help is one of the things. Like, yeah, I'm in. What do you want me to do? How can I help?
What do you need? Like I hear them say, what do you need quite a bit? Like anticipating, oh, there is a need here. Or, friends, my wife who has some enablement, we're at a friend's house and she's wanting to jump in to help make the meal or help with the kid, so how can I help? What do you need? All of those phrases.
And even beyond what they say, they smile and they nod and they make eye contact. And thank you to every enablement person that's ever been in any of my talks or any of my sessions with clients, because you don't know how valuable that is to someone speaking, to see somebody whose eyes are open and they're looking at you and they're nodding and they're smiling. That is a form of enablement. It's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another thing they do.
Mm-hmm.
And how, going back to this baseball coach, they sent 3 emails to all the parents saying, we still need a volunteer coach. And I promise you, it was the person with enablement who said, finally, after the 3rd email, I'll help. I'll jump in. I'll do it. You know?
Right. And you did it only when you went there and had the pain of realizing, oh no.
It's a little chaotic with 3-year-olds, but
yes.
So tenacity.
Well, they sound like enabler maybe, but they say, how can we get this done? You know, what's not working and how do we get it done?
I wonder too, I mean, this is, you tell me if you think this is right. They often say, my wife who has discernment and tenacity, I'll say, you know what we should do? And then she's like, oh, I already did that. You know, so, like I'm bringing up, we should maybe buy this thing to organize the kids' shoes. She's like, oh, I already did that. It's on the way.
Right. A lot of times I think what they say is step aside. That's a lot of things. A person with T alone, regardless of the thing, they're like, oh yeah, step aside. I'll just finish this. I'll get this done.
Yeah. It might sound like I'm on it or
right.
Got it.
Or just let me do it. You know, they're watching somebody struggle, not being able to find something or, you know, do something. My wife will often say that, just let me do it.
Right. Yeah. Or we'll get it done.
Right. And so that's an interesting thing because they're like, when's the deadline? What needs to be done? Forget about it. It's done. Consider it finished. Mm-hmm. So let's start the pairings. If you're an E and a T, this is the loyal finisher, right? They probably say like, how can I help get this done? They're volunteering, but they're not only volunteering to what you're calling them for, they're volunteering to take it beyond what you're asking and going to, okay, how can I help and what needs to get done in order to finish?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just pleasing you, it's driving to an objective end. So how can I, if you made a t-shirt, it would probably say, how can I help get this finished? Does that make sense?
That's great.
The ET. We don't have an ET on here, but my guess is that all the ETs I know would say, that sounds exactly like what I say. What's another pairing you want to take on?
Let's talk about the DT.
Ooh, well, Cody's was just talking a little bit about that. Theirs would probably be like, I already thought of that, and it's on its way.
Yeah. Maybe I was attributing that a little bit just to tenacity, but she had already figured out what needed to get done and then done it. Yeah.
I think that really is the DT, because the DTs we know are like, oh yeah, I thought of that. Yeah. We're in that. What else? How about IGs, Beau? What's an IG sound like?
Exclamation points.
Theirs is like, I think that I have an idea and we should definitely try this.
It's like, I was just going to say, let's try this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's try this. And this is your invention. The let's try is let's start acting now. Let's try. So if the IG had a t-shirt, it would probably be, let's try this.
Or just do it.
Yeah.
You're going to love it.
Just do it. You're going to love it.
It's going to be easy.
Yes. Trust me, you're going to like it.
Yeah.
GTs would probably be the just do it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
My ID, we were like, I think mine would be less exuberant than yours. It'd be, trust me, this is going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not let's act necessarily, but trust me, this one will work.
Or I can figure that out. Or I'd love to figure that out. Maybe even more. Like I want to come up with an idea and it'll be vetted and discerned. It'll be pretty good. Pretty good solution for you.
Yes. My energy is directed at solving the problem, not necessarily getting everyone on board. I'm a G third, and so I do that. But mine is more like, trust me, this will work. Let me show you how this solves the problem. Hey, Matt, you're a WD. We have a lot of WDs out there. What do you think is the thing a WD says?
I think is a good one.
Yeah.
I think I say that a lot. I think I hesitate to pass judgments on things. So I think I don't know is probably one of the things I say the most.
Which is not I don't know and I don't care. It's just I really don't know. I'm not clear. I'm not confident that I know the answer. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Can you see how people take that wrong?
How other people could take that wrong? Or
Well, you could say, I don't know, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying, I really don't know yet.
yeah, I think that's very different than, I don't know.
Right.
And is it even, I'm not sure yet?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is. I think, like Pat said, I think it's the way you say it too. If you're communicating like, I don't know, then yeah, you're communicating that you haven't even given it thought. But yeah, it's more of an, I'm not sure yet. Let me keep thinking about this.
I think it's interesting because like discernment with any other pair of like any other letter of the geniuses is more definitive, right? Like, oh, I figured I do know. I actually do know what it is. It's the wonder that makes it so nuanced that you don't like there's a minuscule chance that you might be wrong and you haven't thought through all the possibilities. So you're like, I don't know yet. And the truth is more time is not going to actually help you know it more definitively. That's just the way your brain works, right? Is like bouncing between the what if possibilities and discernment.
Yeah. And it's not just a double responsive pairing. It's also discernment paired with the slowest genius, the one that will more likely back things up in the process and raise the altitude than push the plane lower.
And just those two pairings that we just talked about, without understanding working genius, it starts to sound like an Abbott and Costello routine because the WD is saying, I'm not sure yet. And the IG would be going, come on, it'll be great. You're going to love it. Well, I'm not sure yet. And what you feel as an IG is, I guess I'm not convincing them well enough. I guess I'm like, my job is to get this thing moving. And the W can feel like, but I feel responsible for all of the nuances. So it's just so helpful to be able to listen for these cues of when somebody is operating in their genius.
Oh gosh, I just thought of WE. What WEs say. They say, yeah, I can do that. But there's this hesitance, like,
right.
They want to say yes, and they want to help, but it's like, I don't know if that's, and I've worked with them before and they're like, yeah, sure. But you're like, oh no, I think they feel bad. They're saying yes, but I know that there's some doubt in their mind about whether they want to do this or not, but they're going to say yes. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I'm not trying to make this entire episode about my son's t-ball coach, but the very first thing that as he gathered around the kids, he's like, maybe we should do some fielding. And I raised my hand. I was like, my son doesn't know what the bases are yet. Maybe we should do a tour of the bases. He's like, oh yeah, we should do that. And it's like, just the idea of like, he needed to get his head around what was the first step, right. And he's happy to help and do the tour and all of that stuff, but you're totally right. Yeah, maybe we should do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, the other double responsive is the DE, and we've got Karen sitting here. And we were talking about, and there's a lot of DEs in our office. And what do they say? Now, the first thing they say is yes. You say, can you help me? They go, yeah. And then they go, but have you thought about this? So the DE is the
insightful collaborator.
So they say yes, and they're drawn to do that. But then they say, let me give you some insights. Maybe what you really want is this.
Mm-hmm.
But every DE I know says, yep. And they go, now let me make sure that what I'm going to do for you is really what you need. But they lead with most DEs lead with the E, which gives them permission to provide the discernment. Karen is like, yep, that's true. And I've worked with so many of them. They're like, absolutely. However, and then you're like, and you're really listening to the however, and you're like, oh, I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, because that's really what I want. But they didn't start by going, I don't think you need that. I love me some DEs. How about you, DG, Cody? So we coming right back to you. What do you think?
Well, I alluded to it earlier. I think what you should do is like me kind of discerning what the idea is and then moving people along. Or I'm trying to think of, or we'll figure it out. the intuitive activator thing for me is like, it's hard for me to plan. Like, Julie will be like, okay, we have this meeting coming up. And my sense is actually, well, we'll figure it out in the room. The things can change before then. So the idea of like getting into the, whatever it is, the meeting, the situation, and figuring it out on the fly, I feel like I say that quite a bit.
Right. Hey, we have to land. And I think that does sound like you, Cody. We have to land on the WI. Let's go all the way back to the top, because my wife is one of these, and my buddy Chris is one of these, and I know a lot of WIs. And I think one of the things they all like to say is, "Hey, what if we did this instead?" Because they're kind of questioning something. They're like, "Hey, maybe we should do this instead," which is like wondering, bringing up an idea, but in like, maybe that's not the right idea. Maybe we should do this instead. Does that sound true to you guys?
I like the maybe is like, the wonder side of that. And then the this instead is the invention side of it without the conviction of the discernment. So I think that's actually a pretty spot on. Maybe we should do this instead is a great way to articulate that.
Great. Well, I hope this has been interesting for our listeners. And this is probably one where you'd love to send us like, hey, I'm one of these, or my husband or my wife or my friends are one of these. And you might have some other insights. We'd love to hear them, because I think the vocabulary of different geniuses and different pairings is really interesting and helpful. And so that's all we got for you today. We hope it's been fun. We love that people are listening to this podcast. Also, we want to let people know, if you love Working Genius and you know anybody who's interested in staffing, we are going to have on Tuesday. What day of the month is that? May. What is that? What is Tuesday?
21.
The 21st. We are going to be doing a Working Genius webinar, free, for anybody involved in, interested in, or peripherally involved in staffing, and how to use Working Genius in hiring and sourcing and staffing people within an organization. So if you know anybody that does that for a living, if you do, go to workinggenius.com and you can see where you can sign up for that. And please spread the word, because these webinars, we're really trying to help people understand how to apply our concepts in all different kinds of businesses. Alrighty? Thank you for joining us. The numbers on the Working Genius podcast are growing like crazy, and we love doing this. So we appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time on the Working Genius podcast. God bless.